the paintings, for instance, Giotto in Padua, the scenes in the life of Christ, those things, people are literate. And a man could bring his children to show them the picture. Then when the Medicis began to acquire wealth, then they wanted paintings to decorate their home, and of course portraits, the Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
It was perfectly natural.
Uh-huh.
So, Arnold, you're still painting. I mean, you continue to paint, don't you, when you have time? You continue to paint when you have time, right?
Well, I'm going off to Brittany with Anne on the 21st for a week.
Oh, okay.
And of course it depends on the weather. And what's so nice there is that in the living room she has this table that we use for everything. And if she says, well, I'm leaving after breakfast, I'm having lunch with Bill and Carol, and we're going shopping. Carol wants to see something, so I'll be back about 5 o'clock. But then I know where
You
I
have
stand.
all the you know where he knows where he stands.
But if
You
she
have all
says,
that free time, yeah.
yeah. But if she says, I discovered a new flower show and I don't want to go alone, you come with me. Actually, I go.
Of course. Well, then you can come back with more subject matter, more flowers.
Yeah. And half the old paintings are there in the bedroom.
Oh.
They're there in the bedroom, yes. Because when she had this, her husband died, I know very little. He was a Swiss inventor, very famous man. They had bought a chalet in Verbier for nothing, a very cheap chalet. And we spent a couple summers there. She sold that. 3 homes were too much for her. Then she had an apartment in Exmouth. It was an old Georgian hotel facing the estuary with a terrace, but no elevator could be built because it was and it was too much for her to go up, and even for me. So
Yeah. And even for you, Arnold.
she sold that. Then she bought a place in Bercy, it's just outside Paris. Lovely, quiet residential area. Beautiful home with a huge terrace, about this wide. Plenty of flowers. That's where I did a lot of painting.
Yeah.
That's where I did a lot of painting. Those were wonderful years because there's a river, the environment nearby, and it is nobody's there.
Yeah.
Quiet. And even in bad weather, I could work inside. That's it. So as I said, she decided 3 were too much. So she fell in love. She fell in love with Dinan, visiting, and bought a modern apartment. Absolutely modern. Everything. A room for washing of clothes, 2 toilets, and so forth, to end her life. The advantage is, it's 5 minutes from the center of town.
That's nice.
I can go to the pharmacy in 5 minutes, or the baker. But meanwhile, it was empty.
Oh.
So she found in Saint-Malo, 25 minutes away, another modern building, smaller, in a residential area, but facing the Bahars, the basin there, the bridge. And she fell in love with that.
Oh.
And the rent was about incredible, about $100 more than what I pay for my cell. So she so fell in love with it that she says it's ridiculous at this price not to keep it. But there are no painting, nothing on the wall because everything is in Dinan, where she has a guest room, I told you, and that's where I had the idea of doing a portfolio of my paintings in her collection, including, she's a good photographer. She took some good photographs. She had other friends, I don't like the painting, but it's an interesting variety, and it's like a museum.
Oh.
And most of the paintings about this size, you know. And once they're framed, they're
Wonderful. Yeah.
I did 2 self-portraits.
Oh.
2 self-portraits. They were sold at Sotheby's, at Christie's, and Anne bought them.
Oh, wow.
Anne bought them. the price was
Yeah.
that high, very high, but it was a nice sale. And an anecdote. Opposite, I know the director of Christie's, and occasionally, as I explained, I put in something. A friend of mine had an illustrated Matisse, and I put it in for auction so his daughter could have money in Paris. Opposite is the Hopkins Gallery. And a friend of mine recommended the owner, half American and half Swiss, about 3 years ago. So I went to see her, very nice woman in the 50s. Oh, I love your paintings. Oh, I like this. And I said, are you interested? She said, my dear Arnold, if you had died absolutely dire poverty, an alcoholic,
Yeah.
we would be delighted.
To take them then. Oh boy.
Unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And I told her in the Impressionism, which nobody reads, an American ambassador bought 12 small Van Goghs in one afternoon. Nobody wanted them.
Yeah.
Nobody. There's a marvelous article in the TLS about 4 months ago about these American dealers who came to Paris and say to Pissarro, all right, 24, how much do you want for the 24? You buy them.
Just buy them.
And the Americans, you see, in France, Bill is a baron. You're a baroness.
Okay.
Wait, no matter what happens, you are still part of the aristocracy. You are part of what they call le tout Paris.
Yeah.
Whenever there's a great event, you are invited.
Oh, okay.
That's
how it is.
They live in their world. In the United States, this doesn't exist. This is when my mother came at 14, fleeing the Russian Revolution in Russia. My mother at 14. These people discovered there's really no class distinction. There's no king. There's no class distinction. You see, because in Europe you had the king, the court, the royalty, the church, then the middle class, doctors, lawyers, the army, and so forth. And that was, you couldn't break it.
Couldn't break that.
You couldn't break, no.
Yeah.
That's it. So, this is a new world to these people. Well, with the Americans, as we know, how they became the J.P. Morgan and all that. But they didn't have much taste. And these art dealers sort of, now wouldn't it be nice for you to have a Leonardo da Vinci sketch on the wall, or a lovely Manet
They
for your
sold them
building?
taste.
And some of them did. And the original Metropolitan Museum of Art was created because an American family went to Europe, began buying paintings, and lived in all their rooms, these great paintings which are now on the wall. Imagine you wake up in the morning, you have a Vermeer in front of you. And they thought it was perfectly natural. Thought it was perfectly natural.
Yeah.
And as I said, during the golden 80s, you're an American actress.
Okay, now I'm an actress. Okay, good.
You come for a month. But you cannot take money, the French, and put it into your bank account.
In the
United
U.S.
States. You have
Okay.
to spend it here.
Oh, clever.
But when you come, go around the corner of an art dealer, and he says, Carol, I have 2 Van Goghs for you. I have a lovely Renoir. And Billy Wilder said, I didn't make money from my films. I made it from my paintings.
Oh, from the paintings
And
you bought
Edward
here.
G. Robertson was the last private person in the world to possess a Vermeer. Edward G. Robertson.
Really?
That wasn't his name at all. Yeah, that was and others the same thing. The others did the same with
So they would just buy things here
with furniture,
right.
jewelry,
Sculptures.
And as the years went by, you see
Oh, yeah.
and now today, you think,
Yeah. Amazing.
and it was wonderful for French economy. That's why
Well, that was very smart.
Sure.
They made them spend the money here.
Yes, they went to the best restaurants, they stayed in the best hotels,
And bought the art.
and you may spend all your money, but look what you're taking back.
That's right.
Look what you take back.
Yeah.
And Duveen and the others, the great dealers, they had plenty of customers, all these wealthy people who lived in Long Island, Connecticut, and so forth. I don't have to name them. It's fantastic. And if ever the United States had an exhibition of Impressionist paintings in American collections, because there are many in private collections nobody knows about, the experts have a fairly good idea what's in the United States, thanks to the insurance companies, because they've arranged it now that if a painting is sold, I tell you how the book dealers work. You're a book dealer. I steal a book.
Okay.
I steal a book. You immediately call 3 persons. 3 persons call 3 persons. In half an hour, every book dealer in France knows that such and such a book was stolen.
Yeah.
And if a man happens to come to Bill's bookshop, he privately calls the police. And the insurance companies, obviously, forgeries, are established the same way. It's very interesting. And when paintings come up in the collection, they put in it, formerly in the Bill and Carol Private Collection of American Painting, Portland, Oregon. That is that. And that's why stealing and forgery today it isn't worth it. It isn't worth it because these people know. They know where these things are.
Yeah.
Just as we know that the Mona Lisa is in the Louvre. So,
Interesting.
I even had an adventure with a forger.
You had what?
A forger.
You weren't a forger.
No, I met a forger.
Oh, you met a forger.
I can tell it was a forgery.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, it's a fascinating. It's not like fashion. It's completely different. Fashion is always.
Yes. Yes.
But if you had a Coco Chanel suit.
Oh, an old one. Really old.
I dined at the home of a woman who was mad about Greta Garbo. And she showed me a suit that was made, the same for Jacqueline Kennedy, with lead here.
Lead?
Lead, yes. Why?
To hold it down, to hold it straight. No.
When Jacqueline Kennedy leaves the airplane, the skirt doesn't come up any.
Oh, yeah, to hold it down.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And if you had one,
Would be worth a lot of money.
even Saint Laurent,
Yeah.
even Saint Laurent,
Yeah.
even Saint Laurent, it's extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Now wait, I have to ask you, Arnold, your mother came from Russia
Yes.
at the age of 14 and she went to the United States. No?
I know very little. All I know is no records were kept. I suspect I have some Hungarian blood because when I went to Budapest, I fell in love with the city. I went to Norway, Denmark, spoke English, nothing. All I know was, she never mentioned this,
Oh, she didn't.
that they left with her youngest brother, who was 6 years old, crossed Russia, China, Japan, San Francisco, and came to the United States when she was 14 and worked as a seamstress. And of the 7 brothers she had, one worked for J. Press in New Haven, famous for students' clothes. When I was, this is in the 1930s. Then after the war, he was in the Air Force in India. He opened up opposite Brooks Brothers, a firm called Chip Incorporated.
Oh.
Chip Incorporated. Beautiful, beautiful clothes. And Kennedy was one of the customers.
Oh.
And when Kennedy was assassinated, there were 6 suits waiting to be
Picked up? Oh.
picked up.
Well, now what was your mother's maiden name?
Levine.
Your mother's maiden name was Levine.
Levine.
Yeah.
Selma Levine. Levine is Levin, which is lion.
Oh,
Which is
okay.
lion. Yeah. But she never talked about it.
No.
She spoke and mostly German was the common language. Some Hungarian, I remember. And when these people came to the United States, I remember, they wanted to be more American than the Americans.
Yeah.
They're more American than the
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah.
And one of her brothers was a very successful businessman in Stamford, Connecticut. One of his pals became president of General Electric. And whenever this man would buy clothes, he told me. If he bought on Brooks Brothers, he bought on Brooks Brothers. If he bought a hat here, he bought a hat there. He bought a hat there. And he learned how the American manners. And there were two sides of the family. The first man to come over before World War I was a man called Abraham Edelberg. He went, this is only the other side of the family. He went to the miners in Pennsylvania, sold clothes. No, first, yes, he was selling clothes. Then he went to Rochester, New York. And his best friend was George Eastman.
Oh, like Eastman Kodak.
And George Eastman said, this is a story in the family, I'm on to an invention, lend me $100. He lent him $100. 6 months later, he said, George, I can't. I'm going to the miners. That's where he made his money. He said, but Abraham, stay with me. I'm on to something. But I said, I can't. And this Abraham Edelberg helped bring, and when the story goes that when my mother left Ellis Island, she didn't have to go through. He was there. And I don't know exactly how he made his money, but he established himself in Long Island, became mayor of Cedarhurst, Long Island, and the hospital named after him. And on his side was the wealthy family, including a man who was professor of biology, my age, at Yale, and made a career in Stanford. But it was a complete separation. One relative remains. One relative remains. This Edelberg had a daughter he loved. The daughter married a broker in New York called Bernard Bernstein. He lived in Upper Park Avenue. Made a fortune. Had a home in Danbury and 2 daughters. I knew them. I was the poor relative. One daughter died at 24 of a tumor in the brain. The other one is still alive, never married.
Oh my heavens.
Never married. Latest I heard, when I went back to the United States, she invited me, had a wonderful evening to dinner. The father died. The mother died. The father married the school teacher of the 2 girls. The daughter, he left, fortune to the daughter, lived a home of her own, became interested in photography. And she has remained in contact with me and has lent me money, I will say it, during a very difficult time. She can't travel. She came to Paris once. I was ready to take her to lunch. She had a stomach ache.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But she's the only one of that side of the family to show interest. Now, thanks to her, a few years ago, I got into contact with the professor of biology who had retired from Stanford. He said, I'm coming to Paris, and I'd love to meet you. I said, fine. He took a room at a hotel right next to mine. He said, come at 5 o'clock. So I wore my last blue blazer, Arnold's. I walked in, nice couple, and he looked at me and he said, this is the absolute truth. May we ask you a question? I said, what are you going to ask me? Are you a communist? Do you have a mistress? Do you smoke?
Do you smoke?
I said, no. Oh, good. We had a drink. So no interest, whatever. I thought, and I left, never heard from them again.
Oh.
No. When years ago, a relative of ours, of mine, a cousin, came and said, Arnold, we have the credit cards, and you know where to go. We want to go to the museums and have the...
Take us all over.
So it was a wonderful relationship. So normally, if you said to me, a friend of mine is coming to Paris a couple of days, maybe you'd like to meet him. So I would meet the man, talk, suggest a drink, 5 o'clock at one of the cafes. then dinner some nice place, and coffee somewhere else. Right? Take them a walk around the quarter. You see? These people, no. Half hour later, I was home.
No.
They showed no interest whatever.
They're not, no.
No interest whatever.
Well,
Well, so, well, tell us, what about your father's side? You told us about your mother.
your father's side.
My father's side.
Yeah, did she meet your father in the U.S.?
My father's side, I know very little. The essential that I do know is that his father came from North Germany, settled in New England, never met him. My father was the eldest of 3 brothers, born in New Haven. He was not an intellectual, but he wanted to go to Yale Law School. It's the basis of everything. World War I. He becomes a soldier, and his mother said, do your military service, and when you come out, you go to Yale. Fine. The war ends. Comes back, ready to go to Yale. And the mother says, oh, I'm sorry, she used the money for the youngest brother, and that,
Oh.
no.
Broke his heart.
No.
Yeah.
Where he met my mother, I don't know. And he had no formal education. I never saw my father open a book.
Really?
Never. My mother would sleep with 4, 5, 6 books. And though she came from an Orthodox Jewish family, she became very much interested in the Protestant faith, especially St. Paul.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, she came into St. Paul. No. And he took over his father's wholesale fruit business in New Haven. I never knew my grandfather. The grandmother, I remembered, was not nice to us at all. That side was up. They ruled us out completely. Absolutely completely. And the first 8 years of my life were very happy because my father would rent a house in Memorgwin outside New Haven from May 1st to October and come and join us in the afternoon. My grandmother, the others lived there, go to the beach. That was wonderful. That's when I began
Painting.
paint so much. And very early in life, I decided I wanted to go to the art school. Then the famous crash.
Oh.
And I remember men selling apples for 1 cent.
Oh.
I remember we had meat only once a week on Sunday. And then, remember, no one explained anything. In the middle of the night, we went to Brooklyn because my grandmother had a home. And that was an absolute change in everything, the schooling, the way of life.
Oh, so in the middle of the night, you just got up and
Yeah,
moved to Brooklyn. Oh, yeah.
No one explained anything.
No, we're moving.
Yeah. And it was horrible there. I remember working in a grocery store. I remember taking charge of children. And I was completely lost. Then, thank God, how, I don't know, we went back to New Haven. Then I was 14, and my father did one good thing for me. He took me to a painter in New Haven and said, my son is interested. And it was encouraging.
Oh, okay.
At 15 and a half in September, I entered the Yale School of Art for 3.5 years. It's a 5-year course. The most wonderful, formative years of my life, not only for painting, but as a student, I could see a play. I could do this, I could do that. I worked in a fraternity house, washing knives and forks and spoons for meals. I worked in a bowling alley, always to make money. And I remember in the painting class, there was a rich girl from New York, a lovely woman, and she squeezed the tube and throw it away. She didn't have to paint the tubes.
Oh, yeah.
And then I took a course in the history of painting, which the undergraduates had to take. And every once in a while, the professor I want 10 pages on the Botticelli and Michelangelo living in Florence. This girl would come up to me and say, "Look, Arnold, I can't do it. I have a boyfriend waiting for me in New York.
I'm busy.
Yeah. And opposite the Yale School of Art, there was a famous restaurant called Georgia, a Greek restaurant, where you would buy $10 worth of tickets, meal tickets, for say $12. So she'd give me the meal tickets and tell her father I lost it, and say, "You make one. For me.
Make a paper for me.
Make a paper for me." I worked at, thanks again to Yale, I worked at the Yale Bowl during the the crazy Yale and Harvard football teams selling hot dogs and things like that. And then, as I said, I liked the company of sculptors. The sculptors teach in 3 dimensions. And although the art school was closed, there was a window open where the sculptors could come at night
Just
and work
come in.
on there. And I used to go there and watch them.
Oh, that's
Watch them,
great.
yeah. And I owe everything to the teachers there. And then, destiny again. I never knew what it was to have a holiday. One summer, I worked in a boys' camp in Maine. I came back, I remember, with $150. And the tuition was $120. You pay in advance.
Yeah.
The day before inscription, my father came to me and said, "I need the money." And I gave it to him.
Yeah. Oh, no.
And I went back. Well, I made up an excuse. But although I stayed out, I continued to paint on my own. I frequented the Bendica Library, the great library, and I brushed up on my French, art history, and then I came back. But I didn't finish the course because the war broke out.
Right.
Then somebody told me that you're enlisted, you could be put anywhere. But the Air Force is interested in university men. So when I enlisted in the Air Force.
That was called the Army Air Corps. then,
In the Air Force.
That's what. Yeah.
2 days later, I found myself in Miami Beach for basic training. It was as though a man had lived all his life in Strasbourg and suddenly found himself in North Africa.
A bit of a change.
That was interesting. We were in Barksdale, Louisiana, Kentucky, Nebraska, and I brushed up on my French, and I did intelligence work in the sense that the 3 of us, we have complete control of everything to do with pilots, their health, what they're doing, and so on. Because that was important, very important. For instance, in those days, the pilots had nothing but just a pair of sunglasses. No, nothing like that. No.
No big helmet. No.
Then we went to England, on the Ile-de-France. I remember. I saw Europe from the Firth of Forth from Porthole in Scotland. We took over a base near Brentwood, which was halfway between Cambridge and London. And it was wonderful because I could, when you had a day off, I'd go to Cambridge.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm told that one of the restaurants where I had lunch is still there, or I would go to London during the Blitz. And I knew the famous Rainbow Corner in Leicester Square, where all the American troops would meet to take you back to the camp.
Oh.
And in those days, there was a chain of places where you could sit till 3 o'clock in the morning. And I attended concerts, I went to the exhibitions. This was London during the war, you see. And in Greek Street, in Soho, the law was you couldn't spend more than 5 shillings for a meal. But in the Greek restaurants, you spent 2 shillings more. Fabulous meal. But one night, and then we would stay at some Red Cross place. And the fog. And one night, and then there was the famous Palladium. The Palladium. You walk in, Bill and I, Hey, Yank, dance with me. There was 4 girls to a man.
4 girls to a man. What a
Yeah.
deal, Arnold.
And then the thing was that you arrive in London, you telephone this Red Cross place and said, "This is Corporal Rosin speaking. Would you save a sleeping place for me? So long as you get back, you have
Yeah.
a sleeping place."
Yeah.
Breakfast was secondary. And I was lost in the fog. I saw a policeman. And he said, "You're wasting your time, bud." He said, "It's been bombed." I said, "Where the hell am I going to sleep?" And I saw a woman.
A woman.
Yeah, a woman. Come up to me.
Yes.
And I told her, "You can come to my place if you want to." It was 3 o'clock in the morning.
She was a trusting soul.
I went back. I don't remember where it was.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep with her. I was
No.
exhausted.
Yeah, I was exhausted.
The next morning I woke up. My jacket was gone.
Oh,
My jacket was gone.
your Air
my-
Force
with
jacket.
my wallet.
Oh, Arnold.
Half hour later, she comes back. She says, "Arnold, I took the liberty of taking £1, but I was able to buy 2 eggs on the black market, and I can make you
Omelet.
an omelet."
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great story.
And then double British time was wonderful
Double British.
because we had a bicycle, Bill and I, for instance,
Uh-huh.
and we cycle out to the pubs in the country, and we'd have I remember these horrible cucumber sandwiches.
Yeah.
Cucumber sandwiches, and there's no language problem.
Right.
Then, on the 1st of October, 1944, the whole squadron, 9th Airborne, came and took over a village in northern France, near Compiègne, northern France. Everyone was gone. The Germans had made an airstrip. It was for our plane. One house out of 3 was possible. And it was débrouillez-vous, in other words, just it's all yours, do what you want. So with a friend, say Bill was with me, we took over a house where a couple of the rooms were available, slept on straw. We had an outside toilet, which was absolutely like a private bathroom at the Ritz Hotel.
Yeah.
Always slept armed
Yeah.
and dressed.
Ready to go.
Yeah. The school was made into a mess hall. The school. We drank hot drink only in the morning. Tea. And for our work, we took over a building, made it into an office. And meanwhile, the flights were going on. The captain was a nice fellow. He was in the banking business before the war. Lovely nice fellow. The officers slept in a chateau nearby. And the officer, in order to leave early, he allowed me to sign my name on the report so he could hurry. And he loved to play poker. And we could tell in the morning whether he had won or lost. If we heard him walking like this, he won. If we heard this, he lost.
He lost.
Then next to us was a chap who handled the parachutes.
Oh.
Every airman had his own parachute. And according to regulations, it had to be kept at a certain temperature. It's very important.
Oh.
Yeah. And there was a Polish fellow from Chicago who discovered the rules and regulations. And he would keep the place warm. And somehow he met some Polish people outside. Poles had come during World War I to live there. And that's how he found coffee.
Oh.
He found coffee. He made coffee for us in the morning. And there was a big sign. If your parachute doesn't open, please don't worry. Come back and we'll give you another one.
Nice.
That's
good.
And then he discovered this Polish colony outside where we were living. for half a bar of soap, they would wash clothing like that.
Oh, you mean you would give them a half a bar of soap,
Yes.
and in exchange they would wash a bunch of your clothes for you? Wow.
So we would borrow the Jeep,
Uh-huh.
give them the clothing, and take it back. Then I remembered one night we had a stove, and we needed an axe.
An
He
axe.
said, Arnold, find an axe. I said, where the hell am I going to find an axe? I don't care, find an
Get
axe.
one.
What is there? Oh. A British convoy happened to be going by late at night, and the mess hall was still open. So I said to the driver, I said, what, you want something hot to drink? Go to the mess hall. He said, fine. And he said, any girls around? I said, no, but... So I said, I took the axe.
Oh.
I took the axe.
They were in the mess hall,
I
and you
took
took
the
the axe.
I walked in like a newborn baby.
Yeah, here's the
And the
axe.
captain, I remember, he says, I don't want to know where it comes
Yeah, I
from.
don't want to know where.
I don't want to know,
Yeah.
don't tell me.
Yeah, but it's here.
In 1 hour, I don't know how he did it, but you think that axe with the leather holder had been with the army for 50 years.
Oh, yeah.
50 years.
He aged it.
Yeah. Then, on Christmas 1944, somebody discovered that there was a Jesuit priest, World War I, who had remained in France and had devoted his life to orphan children in the local hospital. So we decided to do something for Christmas. And the mess hall was arranged, and the children came. They had never seen an orange. They had never seen a bar of chocolate. Bill, I saw men who admitted in private life being crooks, pimps, convicts,
Yeah.
the worst type,
Yeah.
take these children into their arms and cried.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that was
Well, yeah.
in Paris. I saw a peasant exchange a leg of lamb for an overcoat. Money meant nothing.
Yeah.
Then we went to Douai, Belgium. Douai, Belgium. And we would go across the border to take showers among the miners for cigarettes. And Saturday morning at the market, I saw men. You're a lawyer. Well known. You come, you're not begging to buy a pair of trousers. Isn't that humiliating? Then, late December, the Battle of the Bulge. Nobody leaves the camp. I was bored stiff. And I heard that they had to get a message to Eisenhower in Reims. So I offered my services always as a translator, because I would go with the commanding officer to see the mayor, and instead of giving the troops 7 packs of cigarettes, he gave them 5. We gave cigarettes. That was money. Give us carrots. Give us cabbage. Anything to make food.
Yeah.
And terrible fog. We took a Jeep. We took, I think, there were 2 kinds of rations. There were C rations in a tin, which means hot, show, as you put in boiling water. And K rations was cold, you could to keep from starvation. And we took, I think, about 12 tins of the hot stuff to eat. We had a machine gun on, fully armed, and we left for Reims. I don't remember how we got there. We got there, and as we entered the town, we stopped at a cafe, and we gave all of this to the woman, and said to her, half is for you. We'll be back in half an hour. Make a hot meal for us. We entered the headquarters. That was the first time I tasted Nescafe, that is powdered coffee.
Yeah, Nescafe, yeah.
Yeah.
Because breakfast was tea, horrible tea.
Oh.
Horrible tea. How we got back, I don't know. And as for meals, there were 2 services, 11 and 12. And I would go with the first service. There always had to be somebody in the office. It was a mess kit, you know. And outside were 2 garbage cans. What you call garbage cans. One was hot water with soap. The other one was hot water. And you dip the biscuit. We used toilet paper and sand to wash it.
To wash your.
And
yeah.
the second one to rinse it. But by noon it was filthy. And the greatest fear was dysentery.
Oh yeah.
That's why there's a pilot and a co-pilot.
Oh.
Obviously, if the pilot is killed, the co-pilot takes
Right.
over. But the dysentery, and I had a little bit at once. It is something you cannot explain. You just cannot control yourself. You become so weak. You can't control yourself. Thank God it didn't last long.
Yeah.
Then the war ended in Europe. My commanding officer said, I have to go to Japan. I'd love to have you stay with me because we had our arrangement. But if you want to go to Germany, go to Germany. And a couple months from now, your family will receive a telegram that your son died heroically in battle. It was not true at all. You went some Fräulein, and their body was found in the ditch the next day with a dagger. I said,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I said, I'll stay with you.
Yeah.
He said, good, you can have a week in Nice.
Ah.
Yeah.
So I went with 2 other officers. We stayed at the Hotel Beau Rivage, which was very famous in Nice. It's still there where everybody stayed. We had a room overlooking. It was it's in the world. I visited Grasse. I visited different places. Then they come back, and we went to Hassel, Belgium. And that was the end of the war with Japan. There was a very moving ceremony. Everyone was out on the field. A very short speech was made listing the name of everyone who had been killed or missing or died of something.
Where?
And then the commanding officer said, 3 days. 3 days, take off.
Oh, 3 days free.
And I caught a convoy going to Maastricht, British convoy. And the very British troops who had liberated Maastricht happened to be there that particular night. So it was a double separation.
Oh, yeah.
The people were, you cannot explain this liberation. And all I remember is that a very nice family took me home. He gave me a bed, breakfast. The son showed me the city. How I got back, I don't remember. Then, oh yes, and I was promoted because I went with my captain.
With your, yeah.
Then we went back to New York, October 1945. I had very little mail, no home, no home, no money,
Yeah, yeah.
no clothes.
Oh.
My sister was working in a home for the Veterans Administration. My father was working in fact, I don't know about that. My mother was staying with her mother. This was in Queens, Long Island. Horrible place. Horrible place. The 3 years I spent after the war were like Shakespeare's lost years. I painted trays. I remember going to Pittsburgh to decorate for some maniac, something to do with a home. I worked in an electrical supply
maniac.
place. Now, every state gave demobilized soldiers a certain sum. Every state their own way. And I heard that Connecticut was $500. I never received it. Never received it. And one day, when my sister, I had 2 sisters, this was the good one,
The good sister.
worked for the Veterans Administration. She said, Arnold, it was definitely sent to you. And then I knew what happened. The check comes in, I'm not there. My father opens it. He endorses it.
Oh,
He endorses it,
Yeah.
puts it in the bank, and it's good.
yeah. Oh,
Years later, I learned about this.
yeah.
I had a father, not very affectionate. When I was young, never bothered. Not one person in the family came to me and asked, what was life over there?
Yeah, they just
Nothing.
no.
Nothing. My own father, I thought my father would take me out. Never discuss sex.
No.
And the syphilis, gonorrhea was real during the war. It was real. I was amazed. Nothing. Nobody else. And I remember in Stamford, we lived in Stamford, Connecticut. Now, what my father was working for his brother-in-law, who had the one who came up into a wholesale electrical supplies, made a lot of money. He had a good job there. I worked for 6 months there. I worked there. And since my uncle was the director of the bank and I was a GI, my father was able to have a house, and instead of paying rent, he paid for the purchase of the house, which never worked. But that was nice. That was nice. And then I met a man, had 5 daughters. He said, Arnold, I have 5 daughters.
Take one of them off my hand.
Yes, a man had 5 daughters. 5 daughters. Then, the great day, May 20th, 1949, I'm 29 years old, with $300 in my pocket, I still have them, and the GI Bill, I left for Paris.
Oh.
And the government said, all right, the war stopped your education. Choose what you want to finish out. And if it was yours. So I signed up at Léger's studio, Fernand Léger, the painter. I was tipped off. I didn't like his painting at all. It was in Montmartre. It was in the very studio where Van Gogh had taken off his shoes and painted his shoes.
Oh.
Yes, yeah. There were many Americans, some British, and some English. The trick was to be there, and the government gave us $75 a month to live on, and $50 worth credit for art supplies.
Really? Wow.
The first Christmas in 1949, I went to Florence.
Florence.
Renaissance. Still the effect of the bombs. Take the bombs. And the trick was, Bill comes up to me and says, look, Arnold, I met a lovely girl called Carolyn in Fontainebleau. We'll spend a weekend there. You cover me, sure. Read out the names. Bill Meyer. Oh, I saw Bill yesterday. He has fever. He's in bed.
Oh, yeah,
and
cover
poor
for
fellow.
poor guy.
But don't worry. I'm looking after him. And if all goes well, he'll be back. He'll be back in about 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
That was a racket.
That was a racket.
And I lived to the golden age of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. In other words, it wasn't all paintings. First, I went to the famous Cours de Civilisation. I took night courses in German. I became very much interested in cinema. Because later I did dubbing. I worked on scripts, yes. I traveled, of course, as much as I could. And then I perfected the language. I felt I had a gift for language. I became a member of the French Society of Translators. And I began to work. First of all, there was a publisher out next to me. And he said, you're the ideal man because you know what the book is. And I did it. I bought a typewriter and so forth. I began to keep notes and everything else. And during that period, it was an extraordinary period. There was no television.
No.
And everything was, for instance, the theater. You'd have a drink at the Demago. Then you go around the corner, the Petit Saint-Benoît, and have dinner. Then you'd go to the Vieux Colombier, the theater. Come back after the theater, and you go to the floor for a drink. And everybody, you talk about this the way you talk about the weather. And the television changed everything.
It did, yeah.
The television changed everything. Then the Pieds Noirs, the people from North Africa who were kicked out of Africa, came to France, Paris. They had nothing but money. So what they would do, They'd buy an old hotel and renovate it, or a restaurant. They changed the face of Paris. So the nightlife became more, and then of course, television changed everything. But it was very, Sartre was just standing in line, cigarette, Simone de Beauvoir, with an astrakhan coat down to here. Yeah, all the different people, the actors. It was just, it's like going into a cafe and looking away and just 2 coffees, please. People were there.
Yeah.
Then everything changed. Everything changed. These chain restaurants, these families sold out. This was bought by Japanese, I remember. Yeah, I don't know what it is now. And the whole scene changed. The whole scene changed. Then fortunately, I began to work for Time Life Books. That was the golden period. Time Life, everything was by subscription. They did wonderful series of books, like the history of photography. They did a series called Health and Diseases, this and that, inventions and so forth. And I worked on that. And the whole trick of Time Life was, you're not paid in France.
Oh.
You're paid.
In the U.S.?
He said, Amsterdam or Zurich.
Oh.
I went to Zurich with $100. They opened a bank account. And the checks went. And this was a great golden age. You're Bill's a photographer. You're a journalist. You are sent to God knows where to cover something for 5 days. Credit cards didn't exist.
No.
So you would come back. This is my hotel bill. This is my laundry bill. You'd leave. Bill would leave with 3 weeks laundry.
Yeah.
And I learned quite a bit. Then I began to work with the French publishers, thanks to Hachette, thanks to Time Life, translating art books.
Oh.
Translating art. I translated the Guinness Book of Inventions, except the computer part. That I didn't do. And the nice thing was that you sign a contract. 2 months later, you send the book to New York and you get your check. It was so much 1,000 words. There's no problem. In many cases, they say, Arnold, we don't have to send you the proofs. We can do it here in New York. I was delighted at that. And then I painted, when I had the apartment, the kitchen, I met a woman at the corner. He was a Frenchman called Lursa, who revived the art of tapestry.
Oh.
The art of tapestry. You see, the noble people would travel with their tapestries. The walls were cold,
Right.
and bare.
Yeah.
And when Henry IV kicked the Protestants out of France, they settled in England and developed the tapestry art. And a Frenchman bought some of the looms in Aubusson and began to make tapestries. And at the corner of the Rue Jacob, he had a gallery. He had a loom in the window, which was attracting tourists. Destiny. And at that time, I translated World Tapestry, a book that was published. And I met the owner. She came from minor noble family. A relative was ambassador under de Gaulle, widow, 2 children. And we became friends. She was a bit lonely. And she said, why don't you do a tapestry cartoon? So, 1.5 meters by 1 meter, I did it in the apartment, wearing shorts, so I could do it. It was woven. It's limited to 6 copies. They can't do more than 6 copies. What they do is, it's punctured to get the exact thread to the exact color. And it falls into threads. But there's, at the back of it, is all the information, who did it, why, and it can be sold overnight. And I learned that Mizoguchi, the Japanese, bought one. I don't know what happened to it. Then I did 2 others to offer them. Then the owner tried to sleep with his sister, the owner here. And that was, they were not interested. Years later, I gave it to a gallery. They kept it 3 years without doing anything. And Anne fell in love with them. And she said, I'll buy them for you, but I'll pay you in when I first met.
Now, Arnold, these are tapestries that you had done.
I'm going to go get some more.
These are tapestries that you had created,
A tapestry
that you had done.
Yes.
that I did,
Oh.
yes.
He did.
That's
Yeah.
marvelous.
Yeah.
And where are they? Does Anne
I
have
did
them
it on
now?
the floor.
Yes. Does Anne have them now? Does Anne have them now?
Yes.
Oh, how
Yes,
wonderful.
they're in Brittany. They're part of the collection.
Uh-huh. Wonderful.
Huge, this big. Oh, they made, this man, owner, made money, made copies of Picasso to sell to the rich Arabs.
Wow.
Imagine, that's expensive.
But now they didn't make them copies in
What?
in tapestries. They made them in they made them on parchment, or I mean they made them on canvas.
Oh yes, they were woven.
Oh, they were woven.
It's woven. Oh, absolutely woven.
So these were Picasso's, woven
Yeah.
Picasso's.
What this man discovered,
Yeah.
that the nouveau rich Arabs
Yeah.
liked Picasso's work.
Yeah.
Obviously, he couldn't buy. It was in a private collection, a
Yeah.
museum.
Yeah.
So what he would do, this director, he made copies of Picasso paintings into tapestry for the rich Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that brought in a lot of money. That was exactly
Yeah.
what he wanted.
Do you want
Then-
water?
No, I'm
Oh,
fine,
you're
dear. Thank
okay.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. And he had a loom.
Yeah.
There's always a girl. It's fascinating for tourists to see that. Then this woman died. This woman I told you about died. It was very sad. Won't go into it. Very sad. And then, as they said, those days I learned how to ski. And you take the overnight train to sleep in those couchettes. Gstaad was a village in 1980. Now it's the Russian.
Huge.
It was a delightful place. I go in summer, the Hudi Menuhin concert, tennis with friends. I met the wife of a Turkish ambassador under Adenauer. It was absolutely charming. It was a lovely life. Imagine, you get up in the morning, you have a Swiss breakfast, you take a train, and Gstaad became expensive. I stayed at a place nearby, 10 minutes. You go up to the pool, or you play tennis at 10 o'clock, lunch with your friends, take the 2:30 train back to rest in the afternoon. Then the evening, the concert at Sana, nearby, at the Menuhin Festival. The same woman, I remember, I saw at the pool with a cash, here, with a wrapped in a mink coat. And she said, Arnold, don't you recognize me? He said, how can I recognize? It was a lovely life. It was a lovely life. It was a lovely life. And then one time, when I took a train, I sat in the train, I saw a woman reading a penguin book. Penguin. And then she took out a thermos with coffee. I said, this is intelligible. That was Anne.
Oh.
That was Anne.
Oh, it's Anne.
And she was
Yeah.
going to Wengen to ski with a childhood friend.
Ah,
Exchange of addresses about 13 years ago.
yeah.
Exchange of addresses. Come and see me when you come back. And that's when she was living in Bure,
Ah,
outside Paris, where she had friends. There. And it's a very lovely, quiet, residential, very different from Paris. Good restaurants, of course, and forests and rivers. And that's when I began to paint. Even in dead snow, I would painting. And she helped me because she said, I'll buy the 2 paintings, but I'll give you 1,000 francs. That was perfect. That was of course, my dream is the man comes to me and says, I'll give you so much for all these.
all of them, yeah.
So, I'll give you half now. That's how things are done in Paris. Yeah. And oh yes, just to come back to the business world, this was the period when the Arabs were building, and all the French and English wanted to get in what they call appel d'offre. we'll do the whole thing for you for so much money, like a school or a factory and all that. And the arrangement was usually at the contract, 50% of the contract is paid when the first shipment arrives. And then as the rest of the stuff arrives, they pay off the rest. Well, that's, for a firm, it's wonderful. And the subcontractors, they get a contract. They told me they have enough for 10 years when they get a contract for that. 10 years, because it goes on and on, and it's wonderful. They know ahead of time what they're going to do. And that's that was pleasant, because you'd sit with the man, he would write in French and I would write in English. Time for lunch, Arnold.
Yeah.
So, and then I became interested in cinema.
Oh, yeah.
And I began to do dubbing. In those days, dubbing was very primitive. This is how it's done. Bill takes a scenario, and at the top, Carol enters the room, looks at John, and then she says, John, then the dialogue goes like this. I did the prose, and an American team would do the dialogue, which is difficult. Then, you're an actor at the Comédie Française. You play in evening as an actress. It's glory, but it's not much money. The dubbing at 9 o'clock in the morning is only the voice. You can wear anything. It's only the voice. Only the voice.
Yeah.
Grandmothers did children, by the way.
Oh.
And they had specialists for different things. So they had an arrow, the screen, like this. When the arrow begins, here with the light, that's when you open your mouth. Oh, Bill, I can't live without you. Please don't leave me. Let's have lunch tomorrow afternoon, 3 o'clock. Is that all right? And you had to end at this.
Right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Naturally, you could do it.
Yeah.
And then Bill, yes, I think that's a good idea. All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. And they had a homosexual, American homosexual, absolutely marvelous. He'd come in to know what's it all about? Oh, there. That's a Carol, I can't live with you, so forth. And then the technicians would say, okay, that's good. And the screen girl would say, the script girl, scene 32 is done. Then I did that. Then I did the working on the scripts, and then the publicity for Cannes and Venice, the publicity for that. I met a few actors and actresses, and that gave me an inspiration for a novel that I wrote based on the cinema. I sent this, remember I sent you this?
Yes.
Then I wrote another novel. I did the first translation. You see, taking people around Paris in those days was a problem. But the first firm called City Rama, they had it in 4 languages. You'd sit down and choose the language.
Oh, yeah.
And I was the one who did, I remember, welcome to all of you who've come to Paris, the most beautiful city in the world, and so on and so forth. That gave me an idea. Then, one night in Montparnasse, getting to Montparnasse was cheap, good food. There was a Polish restaurant. Soup was 10 centimes, I remember. And there was an actress in my hotel around the corner. And there's a woman sitting there with her daughter of 14, having trouble with her English. So we began to talk. We went to a cafe, and she said, come and have lunch and meet my husband on Sunday. Your actor friend is not much interest. Denis de Rougemont, does that mean anything to you? No. Denis de Rougemont was Swiss, who wrote a famous book, Love in the Western World, a classic. Handsome man. Was married to this woman. De Gaulle sent him to the United States to do propaganda for Free France, to lecture. Actually, women fell in love with him. And this woman, Simone, who had a son and a daughter, told me all the story. She divorced. She divorced. And then she met a man who had worked for Churchill, John Alexander Sinclair, Catholic. She was Protestant. And he kept seeing her, marry me, marry me, marry me, marry me. But he was in charge of the International Refugee Committee, which I never heard of, in Europe. This committee had on the right bank an office with clothing for refugees who fled the communist countries. They were filtered by the CIA. Yeah, what did you do in private life and so on and so forth. Yeah. And actually, the CIA occasionally might find something of interest. And then she said to him one night, after we met, John, you need an assistant. Take Arnold, he's a bachelor, he knows how to talk to women. He went to Yale, he's free, and I was delighted. I knew nothing about it. So I realized what was happening, and it was a good life. I'd fly to Geneva, those days to fly to Munich, Rome, the headquarters, and this was half political. I mean, it wasn't really an embassy, but it was, after through the CIA, attached to the United States. See, I knew very little about this. And then when she told me, she said, John was a hypocrite, this husband she had. He should have did the most stupid thing in my life, marrying this man. Her son was in the United States. She used to sell him Gauloise cigarettes wrapped in French newspapers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And naturally, the 14-year-old daughter, I gave her English lessons. Then, somehow, this career that I had lasted 1 year. Why? Because a society woman in the United States heard about it. And she was interested, not for the refugees, the idea of being the head or something. And John said, I'm sorry, Arnold, we have to part. Never knew what happened afterwards. Never. One night in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, I saw the daughter with her father, Denis de Rougemont. And he had created a magazine in Paris. And I had translated one of his articles. So we didn't talk very long. We just had a short conversation. Never heard from them again. Don't know how people enter it. But I can put former assistant to the...
Exactly. It's on the resume. Oh, you've done a lot of things, Arnold.
I have.
You really have.
I have.
Interesting life.
I'll give you just one adventure. A friend of mine once said, this was about 15 years ago, would you like to meet a widow who's a French teacher? Oh, a French teacher, wonderful. A very nice woman. A nice woman, about 5 years younger. He said, maybe we can have dinner Saturday. Oh, I said, pleasure. So she came to Saint-Germain. She said, I'll pay for my dinner. Fine. Took her to a nice restaurant. She paid for the dinner. Paid for dinner. She said, very happy to meet you. Can we meet again next Saturday night? It's a good pleasure. She comes to the restaurant. Then she says to me, what do you possess? And I said, I possess good health. No.
Yeah. No, but more.
Yeah. I belong to a Fencing club. I have an épée. No. So I sort of said, well, can't live on this earth for years. I'll have some kind of a small income. And then she said, I told her about my cell, my room.
You call it a cell.
Yeah, it's very simple. It's just the basic, nice bathroom with hot water on. I'd like to see your cell. 9:30. I thought I'd take her around the quarter, show her the coffee. I said, my God, are the sheets clean? Is there a towel?
Yeah.
No, put yourself in my position.
I would like to see your cell.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we arrived. I opened the door and I said, voila, bed, commode for
Toilette.
clothing, bookcase, table, and chair. And she says, what? you don't have any master paintings? I said, no, I don't have any. And you have no great furniture? No. And you have no tapestry, famous tapestry? And I was a bit peeved.
Yeah.
I said, is there a fourth question? What do you think the woman said?
Oh, I can't imagine.
Where is the nearest metro?
Yeah.
She walked out.
Oh. There was nothing lost by her walking
Yes.
out.
Isn't that something?
Oh my God.
Good riddance.
Isn't that
The
something?
fourth,
Good
you
riddance.
have a fourth question. Yes. Where is the nearest metro?
Whereas, you see, when I came back, there were more women than men.
Oh, yeah.
Or there were, the typical French woman is you have a lovely home, children are married, no problem. But Bill isn't there.
Yeah.
There.
He's out at war.
There's theater, restaurant. No fun to go to a restaurant alone.
No,
Yeah.
that's true.
And the exhibitions, you say,
Oh, yeah. Without an escort.
yeah. Then the woman say, but you're free, so we meet in the afternoon, have a cup of tea, go to an exhibition, have something to eat, see a cinema, take her home. Lovely evening. But those were the days when occasionally come up for last drink, Arnold, and we'd enter, and then she'd say, the zipper's here.
Oh, Arnold.
The zipper's here.
You rogue. Well, see, you've been a bachelor for
Or-
95 years?
Or
Yes.
one or two adventures with an actress, take her home, and the next morning she'd say, oh, breakfast, there's a cafe around the corner. Don't forget to shut the door.
Yeah.
you never know. You see, in those days, this is where Chanel said, look, Carol, you're leaving at 9 o'clock in the morning. There's a business meeting at 11. You're having an important lunch at 12 with somebody. You're going to a cocktail or vernissage at 5 o'clock, and most likely you'll be having dinner somewhere in Saint-Germain-des-Prés. Therefore, you have to be dressed both for work and for pleasure. You don't have the time to come home.
Right. Yeah.
That was and
her.
Of course,
that was her.
that was
thing,
wonderful.
Yeah.
Because in those days, you never knew whom you're going to meet.
Right. Yeah.
Whom you're going to meet. And even sitting in a restaurant where the man only sees this part, and he says, that was, whereas, in the 1920s and 30s, women changed clothes 4 times a day. They had servants. 4 times a day, imagine.
Yeah. No.
They had special boxes for their hats.
That's true. Yeah.
And when they traveled, they had their maids, and the men
Trunks of clothes.
Yeah. So you see, the first woman to put a pocket. First woman to put a pocket in a skirt.
Was Chanel?
After all, you see how practical. Remember, when she'd go around, she'd know that's too tight. She'd it always say. And I met in Stade a woman who had worked for her. She said she was a fantastic woman. And to show you how things work out, the finest film ever made on Chanel was with Shirley MacLaine, an
Shirley
American.
MacLaine,
Extraordinary film. How she began as selling hats. Selling hats. And she had 2 lovers to whom she owed everything. The first was an Englishman who taught her about cloth. And my uncle, I remember when he would buy in London, when he'd buy cloth, they never looked at it. It was always,
The hand.
yes, always touch it. They
Yeah.
never looked at it, always touch it. And the other one was a Russian who gave her the taste for decorative jewelry that
Oh, yeah.
she says, it's no fun to go out an evening worrying about your expensive jewelry. You agree?
Right.
Yeah.
So she had the
Yeah.
costume jewelry.
She was absolutely right. Yeah. She,
Yeah, you don't want to have to worry about that.
She was a,
Yeah,
she
that's
was
brilliant.
She
That
was a
brilliant. Yeah.
was all right. She had a liaison with an officer, but all the others, and she was not a homosexual. Yves Saint Laurent, Dior, They were, but she was not. She had no.
But she never married, right?
Yeah, but she had
Yeah.
no love affairs. She's not interested in women.
Uh-huh.
And she's not particularly beautiful. And she was the one who said, "Carol, up to 30, you're beautiful. As of 30, elegant."
Ah, well, Coco was
Yeah.
such a smart lady.
As a 30 year elegant?
You're elegant. Then you're elegant. Yeah, yeah.
And she made fun of these women of 55 who tried to be 30. And I
Yeah.
remember once, this was a time when I wasn't the only one, that Americans, bachelors, were invited to dinners and beer. And I met a woman who had a little handbag, and she put her shoes in it. And when she arrived at your home in this terrible rain,
Oh,
she just slipped
She
the shoes.
put her, yeah.
Because she said that
It's-
when you're in a salon to have coffee and
Cross your leg, yeah. Uh-huh. You can see the shoes.
then I
yeah.
met once a former Polish actress who made a living by giving personal health care to wealthy women.
Oh,
She told me two things. Always use the simplest soap. Anything that smells good has chemicals in
yeah.
it. Avoid it, she said. Avoid putting less and less on your hands and feet, except great cold and great heat. And she said there are two places a woman cannot conceal: her neck
Hands. Yeah.
and her hands.
And we could wear a glove.
And she
But
said,
that's very true. Yeah.
and even in the hospital, I asked the surgeon about all this anti-age, against age wrinkles. He said, yeah.
Doesn't work.
And in the fencing class, there's a fellow who worked at pharmacy in beauty products. The biggest expense is publicity of beauty
Yes.
products. The smaller it is, the more expensive it has to be.
Uh-huh.
It has, whatever it is, has to smell good. In the old days, if you bought Chanel, it lasted a long time. Not anymore. Not anymore.
It-
Not anymore.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you have to buy more and put more in.
And the tragedy is that Bill is an ambassador. You're often, you cannot wear the same gown all the time.
No.
No, no.
No, that's what I understand.
That's another world too.
It is another world.
That's
Yeah.
right.
It's not my world.
Really.
Yeah.
Because we had an ambassador at the fencing class, and he explained to me that one of the big roles an ambassador plays is that Bill is the American ambassador to Denmark, as this man was. He said, the President of the United States calls him. John Smith, an American businessman, got into some mess with somebody in Denmark, and there's going to be a scandal. Ask Carol, invite them to dinner. Pleasant evening. If he plays cards, let him win. If he plays golf, let him win. And arrange all that privately.
Fix it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, fix it.
That's about all.
No, that's wonderful.
Oh, that was great, Arnold.
It's been a wonderful
You're-
evening. And it's.
You look
and
so
seeing your
young.
art, and
You look so young, Arnold.
I look
Young.
young. I'm going to
Yeah.
be 95.
I know.
Can't believe it.
Yeah, well, it is hard to believe. Yeah.
But it shows
You have good genes.
Yeah, but it shows you how much you learn from people. Because, for instance, there are two ways of living. One, Arnold, are you free? Yes, all right. Let's meet for coffee. Then we can go to the exhibition, go to the theater, and we'll have you dinner at Carol. Pleasantly, but I haven't done anything. But I've enjoyed human company, stories. I learned to listen, not to talk. Or you stay home all day, you just go out to eat, you hardly shave,
Yeah.
but you go to bed at night, you've made a painting. You've
Yeah.
typed 20 pages.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah,
different.
yeah.
But at the end of the month, there's a little of each.
Yeah.
There's a
Right.
little-
Balance.
little
Balance.
of each.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the diplomatic world is, if you belong to the diplomatic world or the nobility of Paris, You receive free all the invitations for the art exhibitions. You don't have to stand in line. Go right in. Well, it's no fun when you're a woman alone.
No.
But to go with somebody who's a painter,
Yeah.
see the difference? Yeah. You have tea somewhere. You always meet somebody. You always meet somebody.
Yeah.
Many of these people are dead by now. And I saw one die of
You know, you're like you are. I think probably I think you're exactly the age my father. My father's not with us any longer, but you're the age of my father.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he was. My dad was in the Army Air Corps.
Oh, which one?
I don't know which one. Well, he was stationed in Washington D.C. He worked on the you know the Sacred Cow.
Yes, yes.
My father was a mechanic on the Sacred Cow.
Oh.
That's what he did. He wasn't a pilot or anything. He was a
The-
mechanic.
The Air Force did have, I'm not looking for compliment, but did have compared to the mentality. We had a man from Dartmouth, I remember, who was a botanist specialist. We lived in Nissen huts, these half moon.
Like
Tin.
Quonset huts?
Yeah, a Nice,
Yeah.
man called Nissen invented them. And we had bunks up and down. We had one table, was used for everything. Reading the Bible, gambling, riding home. And imagine what question was. The door opens. Gentlemen, good evening. I'm Captain Bill Meyer. I'm from Seattle. Guess what was the first, we expected him. What was the first question they'd asked?
I don't know. What?
Bridge, poker, or chess?
Yeah.
The bridge players with the nobility.
Oh, the bridge
The
players.
poker players with the gangsters. The chess player with the
intellectuals.
It's incredible. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Well, we should probably.
Well, Arnold, I think we're going to have to sign off here.
What was hell in England was to wait in line to eat under the rain and
Oh,
mud
yeah.
and snow.
Yeah,
That was
wet.
it. That was
Yeah.
it. Yes, that was, yeah. I never saw a case of robbery. Robbery.
Robbery.
I never saw a case of homosexuality. And very often we had one stove. And what Bill would do, complete nude, fill his helmet with hot water,
Oh, to
take a towel, wash himself off,
Ah.
wipe himself. Pajamas didn't exist.
Yeah.
Didn't have pajamas, yeah. As they said, I never saw a case of robbery, but money meant nothing. And very often, it was perfectly, if suddenly I was away and it was terrible rain and Bill's raincoat was wet, he would borrow mine. Nobody cared. Who cared? Nobody cared. And once when we were transferred and I was away, somebody took a sheet, poured everything into the sheet, made a knot, and I found it when I arrived. It was a communist life because whatever your grade was, everybody suffered from the cold.
Well, yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
suffered from everything else. There was very little.
That's an interesting phrase. It was a communist life, so everyone was equal. Everyone suffered from the cold. That's interesting.
Then we had a colonel, captain, who loved to play poker. So he'd come in and he'd say, "Is there room for me?" And I said, "Well, you know the regulations. You cannot play poker." Jim, I said, "I know, Arnold, I know, but it's a little place for me."
Yeah.
That was funny. And then the return. I had a cousin who was in in the Japanese islands. And when he came
Okinawa?
home, he was so disturbed, he didn't leave his room for 1 month.
Oh.
Imagine. That must have been horrible. Japan.
Yeah.
That was, at least we're in a civilized world. We could come in and have something to eat, have something to drink. Some of the museums are open. There are a few exhibitions, but at least there's a basic civilized life. You go to a cafe, you could use the toilet if you wanted to. And in London, with the Lions Corner houses open till 3 o'clock in the morning, we would see the soldiers. And the thing was, getting into the right truck
Oh, when you're
to be
leaving.
taken back
Yeah.
the 2-hour ride.
Yeah.
And you hear somebody says, "Is this the 391st Division?" "Oh no, this is so-and-so infantry. You're in the wrong bus."
Yeah. Well, Arnold, listen, we should wrap this up. Why don't we
But
walk you back to your
Yeah,
place?
you asked to walk me
Anyway.
back.
Yeah.